again, and welcome to another episode of Time Travel Theory with Matthew Salzer, that is me. And today we are going to be reviewing the time travel of the Back to the Future franchise. One of the most well-known and definitely a classic when it comes to sci-fi and definitely time travel, and I think nostalgia as well. So as I've mentioned in the previous video, Back to the Future holds to what I refer to as the single timeline theory. That is basically that there's one timeline in the Back to the Future franchise, and basically anything you do along this timeline affects the timeline, and it can be rather disastrous if you're not careful. So in the original timeline, in the old 1985 timeline, what happened was George McFly was basically peeping Tom on Lorraine, who would eventually become Lorraine McFly. They fell in love, got married, and because George never stood up to Biff Tannen, the local bully, he ended up being bullied for him for the rest of his life. And they kind of didn't have the best of marriages, but then again, they also didn't have the work either. So therein comes Marty, who seems to be the most adjusted, the most ambitious, and basically the most normal of the whole McFly family. Long story short, Marty meets Dr. Emmett Brown, who develops the time machine, and what happens is, through pure accident, because of a sequence of circumstances, Marty jumps back to 1955, creating, as I mentioned in the previous video, a paradox when he interacts with his dad, stops him from getting hit by the car from his future father-in-law, and thus, instead of Lorraine developing the crush on George, she develops the crush on Marty. Again, paradox, because mom and son are interacting. Ultimately, they're able to reintroduce George and Lorraine, and what happens is that creates an alternate timeline wherein they have a different relationship. This is what I refer to as New 1985. This is where Back to the Future 1 ends, Back to the Future 2 begins. So then what happens is Marty, Jennifer, and Doc all jump from 1985 to 2005 in order to stop Marty Jr. from basically making a mistake. They're able to do that. Unfortunately, older Biff jumps all the way back to 1955 and gives him the Sports Almanac. Again, we're talking about multiple paradoxes here. So what does that create? Well, that creates what's referred to as the alternate timeline, Hell Valley, whatever you want to call it, 1985A. Basically, Biff is, mad with power. He at some point offs George in between 1955 and 1985. It's a mess. Long story short, Doc and Marty have to jump all the way back from alternate 1985 and back to regular 1955, which is the only consistent part in both the old, new, and A timelines, and basically correct that by destroying the almanac. They do that, and they're able to restore the timeline. Unfortunately, Doc gets hit by lightning, and he jumps all the way back to 1885. This results in yet another timeline, because automatically jumping all the way back to 1885 creates yet another timeline. We can call this the newer timeline, in which basically all the stuff of Marty's jump back, Doc's brown bag, everything interacting in 1885 creates this new alternate timeline in which things are again different, but they are satisfied with that, and eventually they're able to jump back to 1985, and that's where Back to the Future 3 ends. Fortunately, this movie has remained a trilogy, and it's probably not going to change anytime soon, because Robert Zemeckis has said that he likes the trilogy the way it is, and he also doesn't want to reboot. So until Robert Zemeckis dies, no more Back to the Future, which is probably for the best. We don't want that franchise. So yeah, that's Back to the Future time travel in a nutshell. I know, again, it was a little confusing, but that's just how it is. Of course, time travel is confusing in general, because, again, paradoxes. Again, here's my Twitter and my Instagram. Like, share, and subscribe if you liked it. Again, maybe pop suggestions on what you want to see in terms of the time travel. There's obviously a lot of franchises that we can get to. Thank you very much. See you next time.